Hey there, and welcome to episode 82 of the Unapologetic Mompreneur podcast, where I am joined by the lovely Rebekah Meredith, a copywriter, content strategist, mama, and all-round storytelling queen, for a real talk conversation about what it actually means to build a brand that reflects your values, your personality, and the life that you are living right now, and how to turn your quirks, story, and power into the heart and soul of your business. Certified content copywriter and content strategist, Rebekah's business is a result of a lifelong passion for storytelling. What began as filing piles of notebooks with cringe-worthy manuscripts evolved into ghostwriting emotionally moving memoirs. Over time, she transitioned into marketing, where she now teaches business owners how to use empathy, storytelling, and psychology to grow their brands and connect with their ideal audience. While being dedicated to her family, Rebekah became an international best-selling author during her senior year of college, and she's had the privilege of working alongside some celebrity bestsellers too. She believes that everyone has a story to tell, and at least one person out there needs to hear yours. Join us as we dive deep into how to reconnect with your core values, anchor into a why that evolves with you, how to build a business that grows with your life and not against it, showing up authentically through different seasons of motherhood, and how those small, funny, everyday, and messy moments like custard spaghetti can be turned into content that connects deeply with your audience. If you are done playing the polished perfect game and are ready to create a brand that feels like home, this is the episode for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Unapologetic Mompreneur, the podcast for mums with an online business who are ready to take back their time, home, business, and self so they can restore the balance and thrive, both at home and at work, without feeling like they have to choose between the two. I'm your host, Sarah Dew, life and biz coach for mumpreneurs. I'm also a mum, stepmom, wife, introvert, breast cancer survivor, and your mentor for making a change for the better. I've learned how to go from surviving to thriving and unapologetically create a business I love and the life I want for me and my family without worrying about what other people think. And now I'm here to help you do the same. Because being an unapologetic mompreneur doesn't mean that we're selfish or that we don't care about others. It simply means that we are not afraid to show up as our true, authentic selves, to step into our purpose, do what we know is right for ourselves and the ones we love, and take the steps we need to take to make our dream life and business a reality. Join me each week where I'll be sharing all of my best tips and strategies, plus the occasional dose of tough but gentle love to help you feel empowered, motivated, and confident to take action so that you can become the mum, wife, biz owner, and woman you know you are meant and deserve to be. So, are you ready to unapologetically create a business and life you love? Let's do this. Hey, Rebekah, and welcome to the Unapologetic Mompreneur podcast.
Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you are very welcome. I'm so glad that you reached out and really looking forward to diving into this topic. I know that it is one that my audience is going to be super interested in, diving into all things about being a mom and how it is part of your life strategy and how to build a brand that reflects your values. So before we dive into all of the great stuff that I know you're going to share with us, do you want to just share a little bit about you, your family, what you do, your journey, and how you've got to where you are now, just in case anybody hasn't met you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, everybody listening and watching the video or the audio. I'm Rebekah. I am a ghostwriter, and I happen to do all things business, market, and brand strategy in my business for my clients. I got onto this journey when I was actually in college getting my psychology degree, and I did not want to just be a psychologist who asked people, and how does that make you feel? I actually wanted to turn that into something that made people take action, take control of their lives, and do better inside and outside of their businesses. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today. So I'm a mom of one, two, if you count the dog. I have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old dog who is very lazy and is also my son's nanny. I have a husband who is very supportive, and I would not be here today if it wasn't for him. And I just love what I do. I absolutely adore writing for people, telling their stories, and helping them make an impact with those stories.
That is amazing. I'm very much the same with counting my dogs as my kids as well. And actually, sometimes I throw my husband in the mix as well and say that he's as much of a bigger kid.
It depends on the day.
It's very true. It does definitely depend on the day. I love that. Brilliant. So let's dive in then, because I love what you do of just like taking that essence and all of the stories that we have to share and actually just using those to bring ourselves out in into our businesses and everything. So let's start with our core values, because I know that's something that you mentioned. And look, right, our core values and our non-negotiables, and how do we actually tap into what our core values are and why does that even matter? And all of those things that we stand for life and business, and how can we use that to like get going on our business and make sure our businesses feel like us.
Absolutely. So I remember when I first started off with my business, I was told to just kind of list out the things that are important to me as a business owner. And a lot of things came up, like, good communication, integrity, honesty, being trustworthy, the basics, things that you kind of expect out of being a good business owner. However, over time, I kind of became obsessed with trying to show all of these things instead of just, living it. Because in marketing, they tell you to show, not tell. And that's very much so true, but there's also actually living it and letting it reflect in your energy. So over time, and this came out when I was mentoring actually, mentoring some students of mine about going through your core values and kind of just like take all the basics. If you're a good business owner, you have these basics in the back burner anyways, and see what are the things that you absolutely cherish the most. What are the things that you're unmoving with that define who you are? And I went through this myself and I kind of came up with my own. So I have persistence, resilience, imagination, simplicity, and mindfulness as my core values. And they actually formed an acronym PRISM because I'm a sucker for an acronym. Yeah, so kudos to if your core values make an acronym. But I also asked myself, this is great for my business. How do I want this to show up in my life as a mom? Like
Mhm.
I enjoy pushing my clients to take risks so that they can make more money and build more trust and authority in their businesses. But as a mom, it's in our internal instincts, our maternal instincts, to protect our children and just say, hey, let me take care of the bad stuff so that you can enjoy your life as a child. But children need that. They need to learn and grow. They need to learn resilience. They need to learn how to be persistent. And I don't mean pushing our buttons and getting under our nerves because they all go through that. I just mean like in the, how to be great adults when they're older, because that very much so reflects in our lives. Imagination shows up because I tell people all the time, our life is a living D&D campaign. Our son is a dungeon master and he will like dragon fire us if we do something wrong. But it makes parenting fun and enjoyable. And just we I brought this up to my husband and I'm like, hey, these sound great, but these values sound great. I love these words. I approached it to him as, I love these words. I want to incorporate it into parenting, and we work together as a team to implement that into our lives with our son. And it shows up every day, especially with the way kids are. Kids love simple. If you make it too complex, they will tune out. Kids love it when you own your mistakes and show that you can apologize to them instead of expecting them to do it. And as part of mindfulness, it reflects in them as people too. Like I homeschool my son and we get out as much as we can, but I'm always nervous when we go to the playground. And I'm like, oh dear God, is he one of those like sheltered homeschool kids, or is he actually going to be good? But he yesterday we were at a playground and he was playing with the other kids and checking in on them, those who fell, making sure they were included and all that. And it warmed my heart to see those core values that I implemented show up with him on the playground. It was awesome. And it may be like kind of going back to that and non-negotiables, and maybe also think, what are the things I can tolerate, and what are the things that I'm I'm just I'm not moving with, you know? So in the case of non-negotiables as well, I made it a point that creativity is always a non-negotiable in our family as well as my business. It's also like being honest, owning up to your mistakes, having being a good listener, those types of things. I make sure those reflect inside and outside as a mom, a business owner, and just an overall human being. And you do it by living it, you show by living it, and then it reflects in other aspects of your life.
That's amazing. I love that you've taken what the values are of what they mean for you for your business and actually being like so personal ones rather than just like a lot of the generic ones that you see thrown out there all the time. And then actually transferring it to your family and making it part of like your whole family's ethos is just incredible. And just merging everything together like that so that it all fits. And I totally get what you're saying about when I think about I was when you were talking about your values and how they are with your boy and how he's showing up and what he's doing. That's very much actually I've probably done the same without even realizing because my values of family and success and personal growth, balance, and unapologeticness, hence the unapologetic mompreneur. And all of that actually does come across into my family now, whether it's like I've subtly subconsciously done it or it's just naturally how we all are as well. But if my
Mhm.
boys and my husband, they've both got that, they've all got that set of everything comes first with family and teaching them that it's okay to define success on their own terms and being unapologetic of it doesn't mean that we don't care about what other people think, but we're also not afraid to do the things that are right for us. That is so interesting that what you said of how it goes across all of it. And I think that fits so well about, like you mentioned before, about mum life being part of your life strategy and it all being and all fitting together. So how does that connect with your why as well? So we've got like our values, but then particularly when we're having our business and everything that we stand for, the values are a core part of that. But the reasons behind
Mhm.
why we start our businesses, those core whys, how does that come into play? How do we figure out what our why is? And then how can we use that to guide our brand's direction and what we're doing and showing up in our business?
Yeah, absolutely. And for a lot of us, we start our businesses because we want that freedom and that, financial freedom and ability to do what we want. And that's wonderful. That's great. I'm not knocking anybody for doing that because when I first started my business, I did the same thing. But in order to grow and scale as a person, internally, externally, in your business, etc., you kind of have to let that why evolve and let that reflect in other areas of your life too. So I always challenge people, what's a why? What is a core belief that you had before you even started your business, before you even became a parent? What is a core belief that you had that you still have today? And for me, and this is going to sound very cliche, for me, it's that stories have an impact. You know, I remember my earliest memory, I was 3 years old reading books on my grandmother's carpet, and I just was always fascinated. My mom called me a bag lady because I always toted around a bag of books with me. But that's still in my DNA to just say about how much I love that. So when I became a mom, and this is even before I started my business, I remember sitting there one day, I was home alone, very much so pregnant, big belly, swollen, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself that I wanted a life for my son that was better than my own. I think we all want that. We all want a better life for our children. But I also wanted him to be somebody who made change in the world one way or another. Be it through the people he interacted with, whether he decided to become a CEO, something like that. I wanted him to make change. And the change that you make, it doesn't have to be crazy or grand like all the people we see on the news. It can be something that's a ripple effect. So I kind of asked myself, what is change that I want him to make in the world, whether it is, you know, maybe he shares something that saves somebody's life if they're having a bad day, or he can, I don't know, help the environment or something, like not trying to have unrealistic expectations, but just say like, what's a wonderful like superhero version that I can imagine for him, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because having too many expectations is really hard on kids, and it actually does the adverse thing, you know. So I asked myself that kind of stuff, and I kind of like reverse engineered it to what's the thing that has to happen before that, and before that, and before that, and it all comes down to how you parent them, how you treat them as, little adults, like not telling them to go get a job by the time they can walk or anything like that, but just like treating them with respect, the respect you would want to have. Because, I mean, you wouldn't, like, let's look at kids crying, for instance, right? When a kid cries, how many of us grew up with being told, shut up or I'm going to give you something to cry about? How many of us were told that, you have no reason to cry, the world is worse out there than what you have going on right now, right? And I hated that when I was a kid. I hated being told that. So when it comes to that bigger impact of stories, with stories for kids, it starts with them. What's the story they're telling themselves? What's the story you're telling yourself? And so if my son cries, I validate his feelings. I tell him, you're wonderful. You're allowed to feel your emotions. You're, you know, you want to talk about it when you're ready, talk about it when you're ready. And when he's ready, he does. And he tells me. And sometimes he teaches me things to this day with his little imagination and stuff, which is wonderful. But again, it goes back to that core belief. What's that belief that is going to shift your momentum as a parent? And that also carried over into my business too, because it makes me listen to people a lot better. It makes me hear their pain points a lot easier and helps me turn that into a story for them, because as a ghostwriter, I organize their ideas into stories that they can tell their audience and make an impact in their lives, because it's a wonderful ripple effect. It's wonderful.
That's incredible. And that is just to know that he's taken it on board and he's able to then later share with you and pulling it all out. And you're right, I'd never thought of it like that before when we backtrack and look at all the stories that we've been telling ourselves. And I totally grew up with the same kind of things around me as well, of yeah, I'll give you something to cry about. There's a lot worse going on than what you're going through right now. And okay, that may be true, but at the time we need that that comfort, that reassurance and everything else, so that we're not putting ourselves down. And I think a lot of like what one of my whys is wanting to be able to empower other mums that they're able to define their life how they want and to have a business and be a mum without thinking that they're less of a mum by wanting more, and being unapologetic and not worrying about what other people think, and being true and
Mhm.
honest about what really makes you happy. And that stems a lot back from when I think, and just backtracking that of where those stories have come from for me, of growing up. And I was bullied all the way through school. I had a really tough time with it. I found it really hard to make friends. And that's reflected like into my adult life. That's I struggle like putting myself out there and making friends, and because of all of those stories, and it just stays with you. But you're right, it comes back to that like core belief that shapes you, and then it powers you going forward. And I think it's incredible that you can then take those stories and build them into your business and turn them into things and lessons and the way that you run your business to then help other people. I think that's absolutely amazing.
It is. I mean, I would even ask, like, take it a step further, like for you, Sarah, and even anybody listening in, like, take your core beliefs and like ask yourself, what is it about this belief, this non-negotiable in my life that is so powerful to me that I am unmoving with this? Why is this so important in me? Because to be like, even to be unapologetic, it's a word that I've seen pop up a lot lately in the last like 5 years, and it's wonderful. I love it because it's breaking that people pleaser barrier that a lot of us had implemented into us unintentionally. Don't get me wrong. It was all unintentional, most
Mm.
of it. But it's great because it's allowing us to step up into who we're meant to be, like who you like, the version of yourself that you aim to strive for. Because a lot of us, I know, have like some sort of character or persona that we think about. We're like, oh, I just want to be like that person. You're like, okay, what is it about their traits that we like, that we're bringing into us, that's giving us this power word, this power value that we have too. It's amazing. Like one of my previous mentors, her character that she looked up to was from the X-Men. It was Storm. And she loved Storm, but she incorporated aspects of Storm into her values and her story. It wasn't that she was making up something, it was just she was trying to see the relationship between the two. It was really cool. It was beautiful. I loved it.
That's awesome to be able to take and see what other characteristics are that you like that you would like to be yourself as well. I think that can really help. And that's one of the like strategies that I've used in the past of like who is your superpower version of you and who can you step into. And I can't remember where I read it or who said it now, but it's incredibly powerful to be able to do that and know that that real person, that real of you, once you unleash it and allow you to be you inside is inside you, but you can tap into what that like that superhero version of yourself. I really like that. And so
Mm-hmm.
taking like inspiration from Storm, I love X-Men. So yeah,
X-Men is
absolutely. I can
awesome.
see it is it's one of my favorites. So yeah, I can see totally why she would want to do that. Absolutely. So let's have a look
Absolutely.
at you. I need to talk about like maintaining the authenticity and the storytelling. A lot of it comes from like being your authentic, back in the like the beliefs and the stories and everything that we've been telling ourselves and then getting in tap and being true to you by defining your values and your beliefs and your non-negotiables and how do you then with because we know what it's like running businesses and being busy moms and our kids are all different stages and there's such a mirror sometimes I think between motherhood and business that just as we think we've nailed something or we've mastered something, something changes, doesn't it, or there's something new that we've got to learn. Our kids are in a new phase. Just as we've figured out how to get them through the night, then suddenly that's all gone out of the window. They've had a massive growth spurt, they've got a hormone burst, whatever it might be. And it's the same in our businesses. We just think we just get that
Mm-hmm.
level playing field, don't we? And then it's like, actually, I've got this new big idea that I want to do, but now I've got to learn a ton of new things, or I've got to go and figure out how to be visible in some other way. And we're stepping out of our comfort zones and the imposter syndrome kicks in and we're like ebbing and flowing in all those different seasons. So when we're sharing our stories and we're being true to ourselves, what sort of advice and tips do you have for maintaining that authenticity through whatever's going on and all of the different life seasons that we have? How do we stay true to ourselves and still continue to show up as us and do the things that feel right, both as a mum and in our businesses?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love this question because I won't lie, like even though I have one, and I know there's many moms out there who have more than one, and I applaud you for that, it's still hard. It's still hard no matter what. Kids still come with instruction manuals. If they did, we wouldn't be ripping our hairs out. We wouldn't be having sitting here from secretly going,
Yeah.
you know. But no. So as far as tips go, I do have several. So one of the first things that come to mind is setting up what I call smart S goals. So a lot of people have heard the term SMART goals, right? It's something that's simple, you can measure it, you can take action, you see what results you're looking for and the time frame that you want, right? We all know that framework. The part that I thrive with is the last three letters, the EST part. So the E stands for enjoyable. Do I enjoy what's happening right now? If not, honestly, everything feels urgent, but it was really not. Unless you have like an actual tight deadline, most of the deadlines we give to ourselves are subconscious. They can be moved, they can be rearranged. The world isn't going to explode just because you didn't hit that deadline. So move it and see if there's something that you can enjoy. Like right now, one of my goals is to start writing a memoir for myself, and it brings me joy. But I haven't started it yet because it's not the right season of life. That's going to be for later. Um, the next one is season of life. What's the season of life that you're in? You have to assess yourself as a mom. You have to assess your kids. How independent are they? How much time do they need? What are the goals that you want with your family as well? Like, how does that suit it all? Because honestly, as much as I love listening to personal development and business development podcasts and audiobooks and stuff like that, a lot of the advice they give are for what I call single people. And I don't mean single as in unmarried. I mean people without kids, people who who don't have to tend so much into their marriage, who have hands of have kids, or they can get a nanny, or they can they have kids who are grown or something like that. Not people like us who
Um,
are very much so involved with our kids. And we're enjoying that season of life because we only have 18 years with our kids. And after a while, it's like,
yeah.
you know, we had to schedule it on their time to see them, right? So that's what
Definitely.
I mean by single. Not to disrespect anybody, but that's just my definition of a single person right now from a mom's point of view, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So see where you are, because if you compare yourself to those people who are like the male CEOs or the male entrepreneur, or the even the father entrepreneur, there's a lot of father entrepreneurs who are wonderful, but they're not as like in the weeds as us, you know?
Hmm.
So don't compare
Yeah.
yourself to them. See what's within your energy. Right now, I wake up at 4:30 every morning so I can get like a solid 3 hours of work done before my son wakes up. Because I find that every hour that I have is equal to 2 to 3 hours of real-time work. Because I'm like really hustling to get things done before he wakes up. It's also like having that like ticking time bomb effect, where when your kids wake up, you're not going to get things done properly. You might be able to squeeze in things here and there, but yeah. Um, And that might work for some people, not for everybody. Because I remember hearing that advice for somebody else, and I was thinking, hell no. And I was breastfeeding at the time. I was like, that's not happening. So if that's the case, if that's your case, like, don't feel like you have to wake up mega early. Like, just do what you can when you can. Um, and then the last thing, the last T, um, that is about time frame. So I do everything in 90-day increments. I do this with quarterly goals, or I call them quarterly quests. So it feels more adventurous and gamified. So I'm like more inclined to want to do this thing.
Oh,
So I find that when you gamify your life, when you gamify the things that you have to do, it makes you want to do them more. And you are able to map out a clear plan of action ahead of time instead of wondering, what do I do now? What do I do next? You just get up and go. And that helps me out a lot. The other tip I have here is it's kind of deals with developmental psychology. So when I was in college, I focused on personality, developmental, and evolutionary psychology. A lot of types of psychology. But what I learned in developmental psychology, especially, it's not just about kids, it's about grown-ups and adults as well. And we hit these various stages of life where our goals and ambitions change from year to year, decade to decade, so on and so forth. Our goals as 20-year olds are different than our goals as 30-year olds, as 40-year olds, and so on and so forth. So you need to ask yourself, what is the most important thing to you right now? Pick one thing. Don't pick a lot of things, pick one thing. It's hard, especially when you're multi-passionate. I'm multi-passionate. I get it. You know, this is where Spartacus goals come in because at least I can schedule my goals in so I know when to achieve them instead of achieving them all at once. Because if you try to do too much right now, you're going to drop the ball somewhere, you're going to crash, you're going to burn. And burnout isn't fun. So see where you are, do some healing journeys if you have to. I love inner child work, I love inner teenage work. Those are great. But also know when to get off the journey bus because that journey bus or the journey train, it's a never ending cycle if you keep up with it. So you have to know when to exit so that you can keep going. That's a big one. I know a lot of people in the personal development field are going to hate me for saying that, but sometimes the biggest thing you can do to heal yourself is to get off the healing journey.
yeah, I
And
totally
then
agree. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good way of putting it is that we can heal, we can process, we can do the inner child work, but sometimes we do need to step off the bus, step off the train and take a new direction. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. I think it is a really valid point and not enough people talk about it. It's tempting to want to keep going, but it can be that vicious circle.
it is. And the last point I have here, the last tip I have, and some people are going to cringe when I say this, is to lean into pain and failure. And I don't mean this in a sadistic way. Hear me out. So failure doesn't mean you suck. Failure means you are learning. People look at failure as an enemy. And I'm going to use a joke here. You see dangerous animals like different types of cats, and there's a joke about how if it's not a friend, why is it friend shaped? You know, like, but you know not to mess with it, like a tiger or bobcat or anything, even though they're cute, you don't mess with them, right? Failure is not friend shaped, but it is a friend. Think about classic stories we see about people who look weird, but they're actually really sweet. Failure is like that. It's just here to teach you, to help guide you and help you learn. And then when it comes into pain, I don't mean pain as in hurting yourself. I just mean doing the things that are uncomfortable. You don't have to do a lot all at once, but just take it one step at a time. You know, like waking up early, for instance. If your normal wake up time is 7, that's great. See if you can up that by 5 minutes until you're comfortable with it. Because the more you train yourself to lean into that, the more power you give yourself over the things that you can do in your season of life. Like, I'm a homeschool mom. I homeschool my son and I run a business. There's no way I would be able to do all of these things if I didn't lean into that pain of waking up early. For some people, they have a system where they just give their kids some worksheets, and they can get their work done while they do that. That's wonderful. That's how it works for your kids. My kid isn't the same way. My kid is my kid's feral when it comes to school, homeschool. I was gonna say he thinks he's a dragon, so let's just put it that way.
Oh, bless him.
But yeah, just kind of lean into it. If there's something uncomfortable that you have to do, but you have to do it to reach success, break it down into small bite-sized pieces. One of my biggest pain points was trying to get used to knowing how to use technology for building my business. I hate tech. I don't like it. But I also knew that if I wanted to eventually delegate it and to have a successful business, I needed to learn it. I needed to carve out time to do the thing. Even though I hated it, I'm slower than everybody else. Like, do it. And if you're having trouble getting started, leaning into the pains and failures, set yourself a 2-minute timer. 2 minutes is nothing. 2 minutes is hiding in your kid from your kids in the pantry for a little while if you need to, you know? See, like, I need a moment to compress, maybe distract yourself, and take that 2 minutes to do something, you know? So
Yeah.
those are my tips.
That is such great advice. There's so much there of everything you've just said that I could totally go back into and everything. And there could be just like a whole other episode diving into all of that really, really
But
deep. That would be amazing. But yeah,
I
I
have an
I
entire
definitely
course on
agree.
it.
Well, people need to go get that course. We must make sure that that is in the show notes because that's definitely something that would be worth checking out. And it's something I see all the time. I mean, definitely with myself, my own personal journey, but a lot of my clients is that fear of failure holds them back so much. And that and that pain is for them is that stepping out of their comfort zone, knowing that they want to do something, but in order to be able to accomplish it, they've got to go through that pain. And I've definitely been there as well of like tech for me was massive. That held me back. And one of the reasons why I didn't do my podcast for such a long time, because it totally freaked me out. Pain for me was listening to my voice back and having to edit it because I hated the sound of my voice. All of that sort of stuff. But you just have to do it, don't you? And I think just asking yourself whether it's anything like that in your business or getting up a few minutes earlier so you can just have a cup of coffee hot without putting it in the microwave 3 times, whatever it might be, just doing something to
There's
just
something
breaking it
so
down and doing it
powerful about
slowly.
a warm cup of coffee
Absolutely.
and not having to reheat it because
Yep.
microwaves, I'm going to get a little sciencey here. Microwaves denature the composition of your food, so that's why it tastes different after you microwave it. And the more you microwave it, the more it feels like a piece of your soul just chips away.
So true. That first cup when it's nice and quiet in the morning and it's just pure bliss and I can still smell it straight from the machine. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That is definitely worth going through the pain of getting up earlier just to know I can enjoy that.
Oh,
Brilliant. And I absolutely love how you've added like the turned your smart into smartest as well and looking at like the enjoying and the season and the time and everything. That's such a great way to do it because we all know and use those the smart tool, and I've added it so that it was smartest, but that was more about establishing a routine and reviewing and reassessing. But actually, I think, and I'm going to have to pinch yours and do that for myself as well, because I think that's so much more important is looking at what is bringing you joy. And it's very much everything I take my clients through as well of when we go and do the unapologetic test of what is lifting you up, what is serving you, what isn't serving you. And it's so important to do that exercise in everything that we do and embrace the season that you are in. That is amazing. Now, I know with a lot of work that you do, and you talk about taking people's stories and turning them into something. And we've talked about maintaining that authenticity. But how do you find inspiration in everyday life, especially like taking your personal experiences? Before we wrap up, is that dive us through into that one and just talk about how you can take those like everyday moments? Because I know certainly for me, sometimes when I'm thinking about what I'm going to share in my emails or what I'm going to post on Instagram, what I can take my clients through next. And I just think about, and I've heard it before about taking those everyday stories, and I just think my everyday stories are so boring. Nobody wants to know anything about those. How can we take those little moments and actually turn those personal experiences into things that are going to resonate with others and strengthen the connections with our clients, our customers, and our community, and our families, even?
Even absolutely. This is a fun one, and I can unpack this in a whole new thing. But the one key thing is to have fun. Just have fun. Let me give you an example. Because I love writing to my email list on a regular basis, and I have an email that's in the works right now for later on. But it's about spaghetti and custard. And it's a weird combo, but this kind of started when I was cooking dinner with my husband the other day, and I was trying to make sure he was paying attention to me. So I mentioned putting custard in the spaghetti sauce. He freaked out. So the point of that, which I'm going to use in the email, is to talk about how you want to make sure people are listening to you, and it is important to repeat your core messages over and over. When it comes to brand messaging, you have to repeat what you say. Sometimes you have to tweak it slightly, just to refine it, but you're not overhauling it, right? So if you want to make sure people are listening, or you want to just give them a good hook, throw some custard into it, just see if they're paying attention, shock them, but in a fun way, and then bring the message back to the core thing you're talking about.
That is so smart. I'm gonna have to use that on my husband at some point, make sure he's listening. I'll talk about when we're doing dinner in a moment and say, right, I'm going to put custard with the chicken tonight, see what he
Do
does.
that to my kid on a regular basis to see if he's paying attention to me too. I'm just
Fantastic.
saying,
Well, that's definitely something we
when
should all
he's,
do.
oh yeah, sometimes you have to throw a wrench into things to have fun. And I mean that in a very polite way. Like, don't troll people, but have some clean fun and just enjoy it. Some of my best social posts are the ones where I'm just being goofy. I talk about uh, if your business was a fictional character, who would it be? Or doing two truths and a lie and seeing how that rings with your people to see how it goes. Just have fun because there is joy in the everyday life, and things in the everyday life make you so much more relatable. And since your audience is moms, I'm pretty sure there's things that they can relate to, like, that you feel like a thermometer analogy of your tolerance going up and up with kids saying mom, 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 mom. You're like, how do you keep it from boiling over? And then how do you transfer this into your business as well? Kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, there's just little things because um the more relatable you make these things, the easier it is to talk about it to people. Because there are other people who probably don't realize that these everyday things are actually enjoyable. If you think about it, there are things that people do in their lives that they maybe talk about 10 years later. They're like, oh, that was a great time. Yeah, we should do that again. Save something like that in your emails. Like my family, we do crazy things all the time. We thrive on crazy in this household. And one of my favorite memories growing up, especially, and I still talk about this to this day, is my grandfather taking us on what we call canoeing adventures, where he would take the car through rivers and we would have to paddle our car out afterwards. And it's hilarious. And some people would think that's embarrassing. I don't want to talk about it. But if you think about trying to find joy in that type of situation and relating it back to business, it'll be fun. And it makes your message stick because people will think about you every time there's a situation like that. And I'm just going to leave off with one more example. I experimented with sugar waxing once, and that did not go well. And I wrote a story about it. So now every time my audience sees sugar wax, they think about me. It
Brilliant.
is
It's a great
hilarious.
way to stay in mind. I love it. And it's perfect. And it's just exactly as that, isn't it? As soon as somebody, once they've had that story with you, that is what's going to stick. And it's just those extra ways, but it totally makes you so much more relatable. I'm going to have to
Mhm.
sit and have a brainstorm and come up with some things that I can start using. I love it. This has been so much fun. I could honestly chat with you for ages about all of these things. Before we wrap up, I've got one question that I love to ask all of my guests on the show. But before we do that, have you got any like final words or one piece of advice? Or if somebody's been listening to all of this today and think this is amazing, how to get started with it all, what would you say? What would be like your final kind of tip or words of advice?
My final advice to you is to be saucy. Saucy is an acronym for telling a story, the S, know your audience, understand them, connect with them, and be you. Saucy.
Fantastic. I love that. That is amazing. What a great way to wrap up. That is the perfect way to get started with it. Always just dig into each one of those. I love it. Brilliant. And I love how much you love acronyms. I'm totally there with you on
I
that as
do.
well. It's a great way to remember everything, isn't it? Totally.
It is.
Awesome. So my question that I love to ask all of my guests is what does being an unapologetic mompreneur mean to you? And how do you show up every day unapologetically, both as a mum and as the boss of your business?
So to be unapologetic to me is to just not hide who I am. I spent most of my life hiding who I was and pretending to be in a box, and I'm not meant to be in a box at all. Um, if anybody is into human design, I am considered a manifester, and we're like 9% of the population or less than 10. And a lot of people are scared of us because we have closed auras. So I've learned to just kind of embrace my quirks and my weirdness and just let it shine. And it makes that closedness seem a little less intimidating. So, as a business owner and a mom, I show up in my business embracing my quirks. I tell people all the time I write better than I speak. Like, I stumble over my words and say and like and and all these repeat words a lot when I'm speaking. But when I am writing, it's a lot better. It's more reflective of my clients' voices and stuff like that when I do that. So I'm just like, take this with a grain of salt. Enjoy the craziness while you have it in front of you, because you will not see this in the writing. And then as a mom and a wife, even, I just kind of let the imagination flow through. I don't let it hold us back. Like I said, our lives are a living D&D campaign. You know, my son thinks he's a dragon. He knows he's a kid. He knows he's a boy, but he has his days where he's a specific dragon based on power and color. And we just kind of embrace that. And I follow along with him. And we just have so much fun. So unapologetic for me, in a nutshell, is just having fun inside and out.
I love that. That is such a wonderful way to describe it and see it. And yeah, that absolutely is just going to make life so much better and so much more fun. Thank you so much for this, Rebekah. It's been amazing. And I think we're definitely going to have you back on the podcast. There was so much there today that we could dive into a whole lot more. Now, I know you've got a freebie for people. We'll definitely make sure that your course is linked in the show notes as well, because that sounds awesome. And we'll make sure that all the other links are. But just want to share a little bit about your freebie and just where people can find you if they want to find out more about working with you and everything you do.
Absolutely. So the freebie is on brandtrustblueprint.com. It is a 5-day email course on how to build a personal brand. How to build a personal brand. Sorry, I can't speak. um, it's geared towards personal growth coaches. However, I think anybody can benefit from it, whether you are a service provider, a founder, or so on and so forth, even as a mom, because we have to build our personal brands as moms. We have to find ourselves, right? So it's great for that. So 5 days of six to avoid and what to do to fix it. Very lots of like 6,000 words in there, but it's all meant to help you stand out from the crowd and in a good way. So there's that. Where to find me? So I am on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm just getting on Twitter, or X as it's called. I still call it Twitter though. It's just
Me too.
easier. But Instagram is at the Peculiar Writer. LinkedIn, just find me by name, Rebekah Meredith, and you'll see my goofy face on there. And then on Twitter, it's at it's Rebekah M.
Wonderful. That's awesome. I will make sure that all of those links are in the notes so that everybody can go and check you out and go and send Rebekah a DM, go and say hi, connect with her on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for this. It's been awesome. And yeah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I would love to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will definitely have to sort that out. That's amazing. Thank you so much for listening and watching on YouTube if you have been to today. And we will catch you in the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you so much for joining me for another installment of the Unapologetic Mompreneur podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, I would love for you to leave me a rating and a review so that other mompreneurs can find this podcast too. Here's to unapologetically becoming the mum, wife, biz owner, and woman you know you are meant and deserve to be. I can't wait to chat with you in the next episode. Bye for now.